All right, friend. Hello. Welcome back to the Bloom and Grow Show. Amber Housley here. I have to just say that I have had so much fun over the last couple of days leading our Mastering Retreats workshop series. So as of this recording, we just had our first one. We have more that are coming up, and just the energy and the enthusiasm and everyone who has signed up for these. We have over, I want to say, close to 500 retreat hosts, or about to be retreat hosts, signed up for these workshop series. You guys have been so kind and generous with your feedback and loving the content. I've loved teaching it too, I have to say. I have loved teaching it. I was just thinking to myself after I wrapped up the first one, how fun it is when you get to be in the zone in a particular area of genius that you have, and how effortless sometimes the content can go and the delivery, and how fun and how you have so much to share. You get so excited about it. That's exactly how I feel about retreats. And so it's been super fun leading those workshop series and talking about that. This is another episode today. We were talking about retreats. So you're in the right place if you've ever considered hosting a retreat, but you're also in the same right place if you've attended one. I mean, this is really helpful for you, even as an attendee, to know the psychology and the mindset and the behind the curtain and behind the scenes of what retreat hosts manage when it comes to adding this as a revenue stream in your business. So I'm excited to dive in with some of that today. I'm just feeling that fresh energy. Officially the spring season, which has me so excited. The birds are chirping, the flowers are blooming here in Nashville. I just got home from getting a facial. So my face is glowing. I love it. I'm feeling good. So I'm also feeling good about today's episode. So let's dive into how to stay profitable, right? I'm going to talk to you about the top 10 things that can blow your budget as a retreat host. And this comes from a place of being in discussions or conversations, like maybe on the side, at maybe, among other entrepreneurs who have considered hosting retreats and events. And, everybody has an opinion about, whether that's a good idea or not, which, what my stance is on that. It's always a good idea when done right. Okay. So if you're here, you're going to know how to do it right. But I think it comes out of the idea of I've heard people talk negatively about it, right? Where they tried it on for themselves, and for whatever reasons, they weren't successful. It didn't work out for them. And they had a multitude of reasons. And I sometimes have to just wait until I'm, invited to offer my expertise and opinion of why that didn't work out for them, because the experiences can be fantastic. It can be very profitable. It can be very joyful and very fulfilling as part of your business, but when you do it right. And so I find that the ones that don't do it right, that have bad experiences in hosting, it's because probably one of these 10 things I'm about to cover. Okay. So let's go into it. So number one of the top budget busters, location. Okay. So you might have in your mind of a dream destination of where you want to bring your event. And that is fantastic. And I had the same dream as well. Okay. I always dreamed of sending, or not sending, but taking some of my mastermind clients to Seaside, Florida. And you guys have heard me probably talk pretty extensively about that type of retreat experience at the beach. That was on my bucket list. I had it on my vision board, which, side plug, if you don't have a vision board, you want to know how to create one, amberhousley.com/vision board can help you do that. I love my vision boards. I have some behind me right now as we're recording this episode. But anyway, it was on my vision board. Did it happen the very first year it was on my vision board? No. It started with a 1-day workshop and then a 2-day workshop. And I really kind of, as I was figuring it out on my own. Thankfully, you don't have to figure it out on your own, because I have a lot of tools and resources to help you do that. But that wasn't my first thing out the gate. And so you're really going to have to consider the location that you are selecting, of how budget friendly is it? How friendly is it for the rental or for the event space? What is the food prices? What are the transportation costs, right? If it's a luxurious type destination, your ticket price and registration is going to have to reflect that too to cover your costs. Okay. So choosing places like Napa or choosing places like Tulum, like Mexico, like things like that, New York City, like we're talking like Miami, like those are very high priced places and destinations. And so that's probably not going to work out very good if you're budget conscious and you want to make a profit. Okay. So you can maybe take the same idea that you had, like maybe it's because you love, if we talk about Napa in particular, you love the wine country, maybe you have an affinity and appreciation for wines, whatever it is. There are lots of other places that are wine country style destinations that don't have the same price tag as Napa. Okay. Off the top of my head, without doing any research right now, okay, I'll tell you a couple right now. I would look at in San Diego. San Diego can be budget conscious and just depends on how close you are to the ocean. But there are several vineyards in Southern California that are in like smaller suburbs and whatnot that you could host and get the wine experience, right? The Texas Hill Country, I know because I've had attendees at my retreats who are from that area and they brought me little wine goodies. The Texas Wine Country, the Hill Country there, they have wineries. So I just want you to get creative of like, you might have one thing in your mind of what you want, but how can you recreate it with a lesser price tag? All right, number 2, room blocks. Yes, room blocks. So if you're not familiar with this, room blocks are when you are maybe utilizing a hotel or hotel-like destination. Maybe it's like an inn or bed and breakfast, motel, whatever, resort. And you are signing a contract that is guaranteeing that your guests are going to stay on property, and they're in exchange for that commitment that you have a certain quantity of rooms you're going to fill, they're going to extend special benefits to you. Like it might be maybe you get a free room as the host. Maybe you get a discount on the meeting room space. Maybe your attendees get a discounted hotel rate that's like cheaper than what if they were like to go book it themselves online, right? So definitely varies across the hotel and the business that you're working with. But I want to just tell you right up front, unless you have an event that probably has, I want to say around 40 attendees or more, I would not mess with a room block. I absolutely would not. It's not worth it because your attendees, when you're dealing with smaller ones, some of them are going to end up rooming together. They're going to go find their own places to stay that fit within their budget or their own preferences. One of them might be like a Marriott member and they only stay at Marriott's, things like that. So you're just going to have a harder time getting people to fill those rooms. And guess who's going to be responsible for it? You are. You are going to be responsible. And so I would just really recommend if you do go down a room block and you're like, no, Amber, I really want to do this. Like there's some incentives if I do it. You start at the very bare minimum, like probably maybe 50% or less of your attendees, like you can bet on staying it because you can always add more. Like they will let you do that. But initially I would start very low, what you're comfortable for, because if you don't fill them, you're going to have to pay for them and that's going to blow your budget. The next one is like just knowing what your budget is because so many people don't know what their budget is and what their break-even number is. And so if you know and are tracking and budgeting appropriately your expenses, your potential sales, your KPIs, which are your key performance indicators. These are metrics and data that say, okay, of the people who visit my sales page, this is the standard industry rate of people who will buy and like, be an attendee. Okay. So this is how many people are on my email list, right? This is how many people, like how many, seats that I have to sell in order to break even. And then after that, everything else is profit, right? And so it's a budgeting thing, it's a metrics and data thing. It's like really knowing the full view of all these numbers and data points. So then you aren't left feeling like, what is happening? No seats are selling. How am I going to pay for this? Or like you can already, realize that you only needed to like maybe cover with 3 seats and then everything after that is great. And so suddenly your energy can kind of change in your marketing and your delivery and your selling because you're not feeling as like freaked out because you haven't met your break-even number because, you need to know what it is. Like that's the most important thing. You need to know what it is. All right. Number 4, food. Yes, food. Food can break your budget. Okay. And so I find hosts can do, like, there's so many things that you can do with food. Okay. You can offer a lot of food where everything's like all inclusive in your retreat experience. You can not include any food, right? Except for maybe a couple of light snacks, right? It just really depends on the format of your retreat. But a couple of things that I would tell you that could help make your food budget go over a little bit easier is like really consider, like, if you're not at a place like at a hotel where you have to use their in-person catering. I find mostly in-person catering is going to be very high than if you can bring in your own. And you need to check contracts because sometimes they have stipulations. If you bring an outside vendor, is there an additional cost for that? Or maybe they're fine with it. Who knows? But whatever it is like, consider like how I like, what am I trying to say here? I think what happens is that when you're first starting out in retreats is you overcompensate. That's what I'm trying to say here is you overcompensate and you end up overbuying food. You're so worried about like taking care of every need and making sure everyone is like stuffed completely that then there is just so much waste and leftovers. And so I just really want you to be very thoughtful in deciding what meals you're going to cover. I find it works really well. And again, it just depends on the format of your type of event. I find it very well if people do breakfast on their own. Breakfast can be a huge budget buster. That's a waste because so many people have different preferences when it comes to breakfast. Some people are just coffee people. Maybe they fast or whatever until noon. Others only need something very small and light, or they have their own routine. So sometimes if you can, offering something very light or not offering breakfast at all, that's something that they get on their own. So that's like one thing I would consider as well. I also would think about like if you're hosting a type of event or retreat, like a smaller one that's maybe a mastermind style, small group, get it done retreat, wherever it is, maybe at like if it's a destination or a house or a small space, right? I would consider like not going down the route of hiring like a chef to come in to like make everything for you. I find it works really well if you pick like a great local restaurant that's nearby that either can deliver or your assistant can go and pick up, and you give your attendees the menu and you let them pick what they want. And so it's almost like getting takeout, but everybody gets exactly what they want. And if they don't eat cucumbers and tomatoes, it's not going to be on their salad, and so on and so forth. And so they feel really taken care of because they got to decide what they wanted. And so I find that can really help when it comes to food too. So much more I could talk about food. We could do a whole episode about it, but I have 6 more I need to tell you. So let me move on to the next. All right. Next is making sure you understand, if you are using a hotel type venue, of knowing all the costs that are going to be required or like you're contractually like required to fulfill. Okay. So a lot of hotels will have food and beverage minimums, right? They might have room block minimums or maybe not, but they'll say, okay, you can have this space, but you need to spend $2,000, $5,000. I've even had $20,000 minimums for like a larger scale event or whatever it may be. Even up, I mean, I'm like trying to think here, 100,000, like, yeah, $100,000 minimums at very large resorts. So everyone has a minimum. You need to make sure you know what it is and how you can spend it. Okay. And usually tax and service charges are not a part of that minimum. Okay. So you need to add, in most cases, 30% on top of whatever that minimum is going to be of what you're going to have to spend. They're just no in your budget because tax and service tax might be around 10% or a little bit under or whatnot. And then about 20% for some kind of service fee. So just knowing that up front, what the beverage minimums are, knowing what your meeting space fees, knowing like, do you have to use in-house AV, audio visual? Like those are the people who do like microphones, TVs, projectors, those sorts of things. Can you bring in your own? It's just really good. Like even when you're doing your venue scouting, right? That you're asking all of these questions and knowing them up front. And I can tell you from experience now, projectors are, gosh, they're so cheap now. Like I think I got one on Amazon as a gift from my mom for our family because we go camping and we like to set up the projector to watch movies like on the big screen out in the woods. Yep, because we glamp. I should clarify, we glamp. We don't really camp. And that projector, because it's the same projector I would use at Inspired Retreat, for that type of meeting space. I was spending like, I think like $150 or $200 every time I went there to use their projector. I own one now, and I can bring it with me. It's very easy. It's very portable. So just knowing those sorts of things and identifying it up front in your budget. All right, number 6, team travel and support staff expenses. If you've heard any of my teachings for some time, you would know I do not do my retreats and events alone. There's not possible. At minimum, I have one person that is there, that is my right-hand person, that's assisting me in some way, that's taking care of attendees. That's just like that extra set of hands. So I can make sure that I'm being the host and delivering and leading and teaching and coaching and doing my job. That is the most important job, right? And so when you have support staff or an assistant or whoever that may be, right? You need to make sure you're budgeting their travel, right? Their plane tickets, any like rooms, food, anything as well. Maybe even if they have a fee associated with their time, you can do a flat fee. You could do an hourly rate for their assisting, whatever works for you and your relationship with them. But just making sure you're budgeting for that. Number 7, swag. Yes, swag, merch, all those fun little goodies and gifts that you can do and that are really part of the signature Amber Housley experience, I could say. Is like I'm definitely into those things. But I would tell you is to make sure you're doing things in a meaningful way. Okay. And I've talked in other episodes about this too, is like you don't want to give too much. You want to make sure things are very useful, maybe consumable while they're there, they're wearing, but very often is this kind of still goes like what I said at the very beginning when you're first starting out with retreats and events, you go above and beyond and then beyond even that. So I want to encourage you to just be thoughtful and really plan out when you are doing swag, when is it going to be distributed? And what's the purpose behind it? And can it be edited in some way? And I say that because I do know my early swag bags for Inspired Retreat, they were a little over the top. Like and it was because I was coming off of the heels of being a longtime wedding event producer and planner and designer. And so I was used to creating wedding events that just had so many details, even for one day, down to the favor, glassine pouches with special sweet almonds and chocolates inside and truffles. And then we'd have this other Nashville type thing. And then we'd have this. And so it was so much more for like, destination weddings and guests and gifting and that sort of thing. And so I kind of transferred that over into my retreat experiences. And I don't think I needed to go that over the top. And it actually took a long time to make welcome bags and swag bags in those ways. And I don't know if it was as necessary. I think some people delighted in them and it made for some good photos. But in hindsight, I've definitely gotten a little bit more, I don't want to say generic because they're still special and thoughtful and useful when I think of like my snacks and stuff, but I'm not like repackaging everything. I think that's what I was doing, a lot of repackaging in the beginning and putting it in cuter, more on brand packaging, which what did that do? That added more costs of not only like the packaging, but also the time to do that. And so just really getting clear when you think of the gifting you want to do, which you may be inspired by events that you've attended, to just like, make a list of it and be thoughtful and be like, okay, what is the price per piece here for each of my attendees? Is this helpful? How can I spread this out maybe? Or maybe I just do one bigger thing at the beginning and they can use things over the next couple of days. It's just means like be thoughtful and you don't need to spend too much. Okay. Number 8, the next budget buster, alcohol. Yes, alcohol. And I want to tell you, I'm like really happy about the culture that has changed around alcohol over the last couple of years. And it's really been in the last couple of years. And like I said, I've been doing events for, 2 decades now and more than a decade in my own business. And the way alcohol was consumed in the early years versus now is much different. And it's much less. I will say that too. But I've also put in boundaries to make sure my budget doesn't get blown. In the early years, it could have been like a free for all, right? Open bar style, like all of those things. I find works really well is doing drink tickets. So, and this is when I'm thinking of events that are more larger scale where they're going to be served by like a bartender. I'm not talking about like self-serve things that are smaller retreats, but larger scale events, or if you're using a hotel or, some kind of property like that, using a drink ticket is a great way to manage people's consumption, right? Because they naturally, when there's a little bit of a boundary in place, they're not going to drink as much. And you really don't want a bunch of drunk people at your events. I promise you, it's not going to be that much fun. You don't want to babysit people. But I also find they are perfectly delighted in that. And so if you have maybe multiple events over, evenings or cocktail hours over multiple days, you might just do one drink ticket per day. And you can tell them up front and say, hey, like I've gifted and I'm, covering your first drink. And then feel free to open a bar tab with the bartender, and it's a cash bar after that. And no one has ever given me grief or ever given me a poor review because of that. They are more than fine knowing that they got a cocktail purchase for them. The one thing that does make me laugh, though, is the attendees who don't drink are giving away their tickets to other people. They're like, who's drinking? Here, you can have mine. And I want to be like, no, you don't have to give those away. That drink's going to cost me $15. No, if you don't want to drink it, just don't drink it. That's my little budget brain as a host, what I think of, but it's fine. It would have been drinking anyway, right? Okay, next one, number 9. The size of your event really does matter. Okay, so I just want to encourage you to avoid the temptation of planning too big of an event or too big of a space when you're first starting out, because I want this to be profitable for you. I want this to be manageable for you. And so I usually tell first-time event and retreat hosts, a conference of several hundred people might not be the first one out the gate that's going to be the most profitable for you. And so that's just me just setting realistic expectations. I think size does play a really big importance. And unless you have the experience and the knowledge and a person like me that's helping you guide through that process, you are bound to make some really big mistakes. And when you're doing a larger scale event or conference and you don't have that person that's helping guide you through that, it can be kind of stinky in the end. All right, number 10. This one actually is going to be probably not what you expected, but it's super, super important. The biggest thing that can blow your budget is actually your own personal self-care. I know you're like, how is that going to blow my budget? Well, if you're not making sure that you're setting yourself up for success, if you don't have intentional rest planned out during your retreat or your event, if you don't have breaks to be your best self during the retreat as a host, things are going to go sideways that are then going to domino affect all the other things we just talked about. You're not going to make the best decisions. You're going to let things slide. You're going to start saying yes to everything. And it's all because you haven't taken really good care of yourself. And you might be completely burned out and you're like, I don't care, whatever it is, we can do it, right? That's the attitude you can adopt. And so it's really important that you are considering during the delivery of your content, the pacing of your timeline over the day or multiple days, is that you have built-in breaks for you to not talk, to not be on stage, you could say, quote, and that doesn't even mean being physically on a stage. That's just having to interact with people and attendees and having, your hat on of where you're the host. It's really important that you're doing that and you're taking those steps away. There's a lot of self-care that has to happen too. So you aren't left feeling defeated and deflated, because my hope is that this won't be the only retreat that you do. And my hope is that you might even sell something at this event or retreat that becomes the next offer and the next step in their journey. Maybe it's another retreat. Maybe it's a, next service offering or coaching or strategy or consulting or another product, whatever it may be. You will not be able to sell that well or have the energy even to put yourself at that if you haven't taken care of yourself. So that's going to be a budget buster for sure. All right. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I know one of our workshop attendees at the Mastering Retreats workshop, commented on social media, and she was saying how it felt like she was having a glass of lemonade with one of her friends, like, kind of across the table. And I hope that's exactly the type of experience that you're having here on this episode. And here, as I share all of this retreat knowledge that I just love talking about so much. So definitely join me at the workshop series. If you are loving this podcast, share it with a friend, leave a review. That totally helps me and helps this podcast find more people so I can really help others make an impact in this world with their businesses, with the clients and customers that are just asking for a retreat to come to life for your product and for your brand and for your business. So I'm excited to be there every step of the way. All right, friend, until we meet again, I hope you bloom and grow wherever you are today. Take care.